Shashi's from Sri Lanka. I hope we have some more of his countrymen here. And of course, throughout this region with UAE, Oman, Saudi, Lebanon, Bahrain, Qatar, and all points in between. So, and also we often get participants from Russia, Ukraine, and Thailand often is represented as well in our audience. So regardless of where you're from, and if I missed your nationality, I do apologize, but you're all welcome. My name again is Mark Cleland, and I'll be with you this evening for about 3 hours talking about the IELTS test and giving you some tips and suggestions. So do that audio test. We also have questions. We will use the chat box. We don't overuse it, because I like to keep that part to a minimum, because I do, direct questions that we ask you, I keep to a minimum, but your questions to me, please send them in. And at the end, I usually spend well over 15, it says 15 minutes here, but you can bet I'll spend more time than that. And I also anticipate questions during the presentation, because I've been doing this presentation a long time. I used to give it face-to-face 2 or 3 or even 4 times every month. So I know what questions you will have. I will try to answer them as I go along. But then, of course, at the end, I will answer even more of them. All right? Now, there are webinars coming up that you should take advantage of. They're all free. There are masterclass webinars. The next 2 are November 2nd and December 2nd. And, the 4th of November and the 9th of December. They're at 2 p.m. They're just getting date and time confused. So on Wednesday, the 4th of November, 2 p.m. Dubai time, and Wednesday, the 9th of December, at 2 p.m. Dubai time. So those are the next 2 masterclass webinars. Then there are the IDP IELTS expert live streaming, the Ask the Expert presentations. There are 4 more of those before the end of the year, 27th of October, which is just next week. And that's a 60 minutes of only questions and answers. That's it. And then on the 10th and 24th of November, and then again on the 1st of December. So that's 4 more opportunities for 1 hour of just question and answers between now and the end of the year. And then 2 more of these countdown to IELTS webinars, one on the 18th of November and one on the 16th of December. So all of these presentations are free. They're all virtual. They're all online, like this one. And so they're perfectly safe for you to attend. You can attend from home, on your handheld, on your laptop. Now, these presentations, we don't send you the PowerPoints, but of course you're welcome to do screenshots or whatever you want to do, photographs, if you want to get specific screens so that you can review them later. I have no problem with that at all. So there's also let me go back. I apologize. There is an free online class that's available now. It's over a 30-hour online course from Macquarie University in Australia, and it's completely free to test takers. So ask your local test center. They can give you the link to so that you can access that. Take advantage of it. It's a very, very good online training program, and I would recommend that you take advantage of it. Good thing about it is you can do as little or as much as you want. You can do it in your own time, and it's free. So a lot of good things about that. So tell us what you think. So we have a lot of prep support tools. We have the online course that I just mentioned. We have videos on IELTS Essentials and YouTube, on the idpielts.me and IDP IELTS Australia web pages. There are free practice tests in those locations as well. And then there are the assist tools where you actually take a test and it's assessed by an expert. So I'd like to know which of these you might take advantage of. or that you all perhaps already use. You should definitely do the videos, the master class online, the free practice tests. Especially, I would recommend that you do the listening tests that are available online, and I'll talk more about that in a little while when I get to the listening test. In the presentation this evening, I'll cover all 4 tests. I'll cover writing first, and that will be most of tonight's presentation. Will be just on the writing test. All right? So hopefully we will cover all the ground that you need and that you want. So here we go. The Essentials website, 73% of you are using that. Fantastic. The YouTube, the online course, and the assist tools. Now the assist tools, particularly the writing assist, is very, very popular right now because you send in both a task 1 and a task 2, either academic or general training, depending on which module you're taking, and an expert assesses your work and responds to you with a written report where they tell you both your strengths and your weaknesses. So it's a very valuable tool that you should take advantage of. So good. I'm glad that you're using these, and you should use more of them as you prepare for the test. Between now and when you take the test, do anything you can to get yourself ready. There's no reason not to spend time on test prep. Now, if we do have a connection failure, which of course happens, and it usually isn't system-wide, it's usually perhaps in one country or even one city because of something local. But if it does happen, we will be back. So just be patient. Like it says, get up and stretch, get a drink of water, and we will be back. So hopefully that won't happen. Last presentation, it didn't happen. I hope we have a repeat of that tonight. So, as most of you probably know, you can take the IELTS test on either computer or on paper. So there's the paper-based test or the computer-delivered test. Now, the computer-delivered test and the paper-based test, the listening, reading, and writing tests are exactly the same as far as questions, what the test, the types of questions that are on the test. But one is given to you in a booklet at your desk and you work on it with a pencil. And the other is on a monitor and you use your keyboard as your interface. So the computer-delivered test is gaining in popularity because, quite frankly, that's what everybody uses these days, and people are more comfortable using a computer than they are using a pencil and paper. So assess it yourself. Go to the website, look at the samples of both types of tests. There are sample videos about the computer-delivered test. You can go into the test center and take a sample computer-delivered test, and obviously you can access many versions of the paper-based test. If you've done any degree of test prep already, you've already seen a paper-based test. But if you haven't seen a computer-delivered test, go to the website, check it out, do the sample test if you have the time. And if you've already booked one test and you want to change to the other, you can do that. There's no penalty for it. Now, the speaking test is the same. It's still face-to-face. It might be done over Zoom, over a computer, but it's still face-to-face, and the examiner is live right in front of you, very comfortable. We've done literally thousands and thousands of these video conference speaking tests, and there's absolutely no problem doing them. So don't feel at all nervous about that. And in fact, a lot of people feel safer and more comfortable doing it over video because of the social distancing. Now that we're all dealing with COVID-19, nobody wants to be sitting in a room close up to somebody taking a speaking test. So, think about it. As far as a mask, if you do take a test in a face-to-face setting, then typically there's a plexiglass barrier between you and the examiner. Both you and the examiner wear masks. The examiner wears gloves. You don't hand papers or materials back and forth between you. Anything you use stays on your side of the screen. Anything the examiner uses stays on his or her side of the screen. Okay, so it's very safe. They use temperature checks before the test, and there's plenty of hand sanitizer, and social distancing rules are maintained at all times. Now, one of the key differences in the computer-delivered test is that you get your results in 3 to 5 days. The paper-based test has always been 13 days, and it still is. But the computer-delivered test, you get your results much, much more quickly. Now, also, the test availability is a key difference because the paper-based test is only offered 4 days a week, 4 days a month, and only 2 of those dates offer the general training test. Whereas with the computer-delivered test, it's offered up to 7 days a week, and in some locations as many as 3 times every day. So morning, afternoon, and evening test sessions. All right. So I was in Uzbekistan a few months ago, and that's what they were doing. There was a morning session, afternoon session, and an evening session. So it's fantastic. And the general training test is available at all of those test sessions. So it's always available. It's available every time that the test is offered. So it's a fantastic opportunity for you to take the test at your convenience instead of having to change your schedule for the test. Now, as I said before, the benefits, it's faster results, 3 to 5 days, up to 7 days a week, up to 3 sessions a day, quiet test room, comfortable chairs, small test sessions. There might be 10 people in a room instead of in a paper-based test where where you have a large room with quite a few people. Now, even those have fewer people in the room than we used to because everyone is spread out in the room with plenty of separation between everybody. But there are still more people in the room than there are for a computer-delivered test. There's less waiting because you don't have the time in between the tests. The length of the test is exactly the same. For example, the reading test is still 60 minutes. However, the time between the listening and reading test is much less because the test team do not have to give you papers and collect papers from you. All you have to do is click a button and go to the next test on the computer. So you're actually in the room quite a bit less time, even though the test itself is the same length of time. Okay? So that's another advantage. Whereas with the computer-delivered test, you may be in the room, you will be in the room over 3 hours. With the paper-based test, you'll be in the room, usually say from 8:30 in the morning till about 12:30. So about 4 hours. However, with the computer-delivered test, it's much, much closer to only 2.5 to 3 hours that you're in the room. So for busy people, that hour and a half makes a big difference. Everybody wears noise-canceling headphones, which is a big advantage. You can keep them on in the parts of the test where you don't need the headphones if you just want to be shut out and have complete silence. Okay? So again, reduced test sizes, partitions, masks, the social distancing, disinfection and cleaning, hand sanitizers, temperature checks, the free preparation materials, the spacing. Prepare, take your time, do what you can before now and between now and when you take the test to prepare as much as you can. There are new features in the computer-delivered test. For example, you can increase the size of the text, you can change the colors, and you can change the screen resolutions. So if you're having trouble seeing it, you can change it. Perhaps you're colorblind, which I am. I'm colorblind. so I can actually change the color of the screen to make it easier for me to read it. That would be great. I wish I had had something like that when I was younger. So these are advantages to you that you can take advantage of. Also, you can move backwards and forwards through the test by either clicking on the, it's 3, 4, 5, those are the question numbers. You can click on the question numbers to go to that question and type your answer. Or if you click on the button at the bottom, for example, if you clicked on number 16, it would take you automatically to question 16 and you'd be in that box. So it's a great way to move around the test. Also, the colors change at the bottom there. You can see in part 1, that first one where the cursor is, the color's different. If you've answered a question, the color changes, or if you have left one blank, the color also changes. So it's easy to see as you move through the test which ones you answered, which ones you did not answer, so you can go back to the ones you need to. Again, you can highlight them. You can also use drop-down note pages. So you can see how the text is highlighted behind, and you can drop down the little notepad. You can take notes on that. You will also have a piece of paper and a pencil on the desk next to you, and just in case you want to use it, okay? So, and if you used all that paper for whatever reason, you can just ask and they'll give you another piece of paper, okay? So there are lots of opportunities for notes, for scribbles, for whatever you need to do for planning your essay, or just jotting down some ideas. Now, there's a word count on the writing test, which is fantastic. And also the timer is right there, so you can see how much time you have left, and you can see how many words you've written. There is no spell check, but there is a word count, and that's huge, and it's a huge advantage. So once you've reached your 150 words for part 1, you know that now I can wrap it up. I can finish it. I'll probably be a little bit over 150 words, and that's fine. But you don't have to write 250 or 300 words. It's more than you need to do your job. Remember, you're given a job and you want to do it, but you don't need to overdo it. Okay? So pay attention to those word counts. Now, some frequently asked questions. The pencil and paper to make notes, as I just told you, you will. If you finish a section, you can move to the next section, but you cannot, you can't leave the room, but you can start the next session. Like a reading test where there are 3 sections. You can move through those sections as much as you want. In the writing test, you can go from section 1 to section 2. And in the listening test, I would not suggest that you move between sections of that test. There are 4. Until you've finished all the questions, then you can move back and forth as you wish. You don't want to move to section 4 when you're still listening to section 1. That won't help you at all. Now, you still have to stay till the test is over before you move to the next test, but that's to your advantage, to use the time to make sure that you've answered all the questions. If you can't type quickly, I think you'll find that you still have plenty of time. Even hunt and peck with 2 fingers, you can type quickly enough to do a good job on the computer delivered test. As far as transferring to answers in the listening test, you don't need 10 minutes to transfer because you're typing the answers directly onto the question. The question sheet is on the monitor, and you're typing your answers directly into it. You do get two minutes at the end to check your work, but you don't need the 10 minutes you get in the paper-based test. It's just not necessary. The test report form is exactly the same for both the computer-delivered and the paper-based test. You can book multiple tests, but I think you'll find that if you do some test prep, you won't need to book multiple tests because you'll get the score that you need. Remember, IELTS is not a pass-fail test. It's a test that shows you your ability on the day you took the test. So it depends on how well you do when you're in the test room. You should have been told what score whatever organization it is that you're dealing with, they should have told you what score they expect you to get. And that you either achieve it or you do not, but it's not pass-fail. I know it can feel like that sometimes, but it isn't really. So again, you have your listening test is 30 minutes, 4 sections, 40 questions. Reading is 60 minutes, 3 sections. Writing is 60 minutes, 2 tasks, and speaking is 11 to 14 minutes with 3 parts. Total test time is 2 hours and 44 minutes, plus the 10 minutes transfer time in the paper-based test. However, remember, in the paper-based test, you do have time between the tests to hand out and collect papers, and that time you don't have it in the computer-delivered test. So your time in the room is quite a bit less. So here are some mean scores on the academic test. You can see where people from the region have done well, have done their stronger skills, their weaker skills. Okay? You'll notice reading in some places is the strongest skill, in other places it's speaking. It really just depends. Listening is the strongest, like for example in Egypt, where listening skills are the strongest, whereas in Iran it's speaking. Okay, so look down through this. See Jordan again is speaking. Typically speaking is most people's strongest skill because it's the one skill that they use the most frequently. However, it depends on the multicultural nature of the country. So, for example, here in the UAE, speaking is stronger because there are quite a few non-Arabic speakers. So, Emiratis have an opportunity to speak English much, much more often than, say, in Uzbekistan, for example, or Kazakhstan. Case in point, Kazakhstan, where the listening and reading scores are higher than the speaking scores, okay? And the same in Uzbekistan. So, but if you look, typically the lowest score for most nationalities is writing, and that's why I'll spend the lion's share of the presentation tonight on writing. Here are the general training scores from some of the same countries. Some nationalities take very few or no general training tests, so those scores are not available. But some countries take enough of them that they've published the results. So hopefully that's given you some insight, and now we'll start the actual test prep with the writing test. And once again, I'll spend about an hour on this, just on the writing, maybe a little more. And here we go. Now, the writing test is 60 minutes long, and on the paper-based test, there'll be an actual timer on the wall. You'll see it, and it'll count down 60, and you need to pay attention to it because on the task 1, you don't want to spend any more than 20 minutes. So once it hits 40, you need to move to task 2, and hopefully you'll already be on task 2. Typically, a task 1 takes a well-prepared candidate, which I hope you will be, about 12 to 15 minutes to do a task 1, okay? And I've been teaching IELTS test prep for many, many years, and my students in my classes, that was typical of them as well. 12 to 14 minutes for a task 1. That gives you more time for task 2. Now, in the paper-based test, they'll actually say out loud, 40 minutes left. But in the computer-delivered test, the timer's on the monitor. It's on the screen in front of you, and it will flash at 40. It'll flash at 20, okay? And they'll announce it at 20 in the paper-based test. They'll also announce 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and it'll flash for 10 and 5 as well on the computer-delivered test. So pay attention to those timers. Pay attention to those announcements because time is your enemy. Now, in the writing test, the way you're scored is an examiner will look at your work and they'll score you on 4 things. The first is task achievement. Did you do your job? Did you answer the question? Okay. In academic task 1, okay? You have an overview, okay, which is a summary of the presentation, okay? That's all it is. It's a summary. In the general training, do you have a purpose? Do you have a reason you're writing? They describe it as a letter, but in today's world, of course, it would be an email. I'm writing this to invite you to a party. There's the purpose. Get it there right at the beginning. That's one of the things that's scored in task achievement. Is the purpose clear? Okay? Now, coherence and cohesion is, do you have paragraphs? Is it divided into parts? Okay? You have a clear introduction. Okay? That's separate ideas than the rest of the paper. Okay? It holds together. That's your coherence, your cohesion, like words like the first example, another, next, after that. Those kind of words, you have to have them. They must be there. Okay? They must be there. If you don't have them, it will hurt your score. So you have to have it organized and you have to have it divided, like the positive things, the negative things, right? So different paragraphs for different ideas, for different parts, the causes of something, the solutions to a problem, right? Or they give you two questions and you have to deal with both of them. Put what you write about one question in one paragraph, and what you write in the other question, put it in another paragraph. Separate them. That kind of separation and using those words that show the sequencing, first, another, next, after that, all those kind of words, that's what you're scored on here. Lexical resource, this is just it's your vocabulary and the strength of the language that you use. A very simple example is if you said the temperature went up, or you said the temperature increased significantly. Okay? So it went up or it increased significantly. Which one is stronger? Obviously the second one is stronger. It uses stronger vocabulary, right? So that's what they want, is that you don't just, it went up is maybe correct, but the temperature increased significantly says it better. So try to use good, strong vocabulary instead of just simple language. Some simple language is perfectly fine. You don't have to use all larger, more complex vocabulary, but you have to have some of it. You can't have a whole paper written with just very simple language. And then your grammatical range and accuracy. Now this is two things, the range and also the accuracy. Now a very good way to get a range of grammar is to answer questions and then to write about how something used to be and how it is now and how you hope it will be in the future. Now, right? So for example, if you had to write about the causes of air pollution, you'd say one of the main causes of air pollution used to be factories, but now it is automobiles. And in the future, so you're doing past, present, and future just by answering one simple question. So that's a good way to get your range of grammar. Now, this also works in the speaking when they ask you a question. They might ask you, where do you live? If someone asked me, I could say, well, when I moved to the UAE, I lived in Abu Dhabi at first. I lived there for a year, and then I moved to Dubai, and I have been living in Dubai for over 9 years. And in the future, I hope to, I will, I am going to, right? So you have your options. But all I did was answer a question about where do you live? And I didn't go on and on and on and on and on. I just said, well, when I first moved here, I used to live in Abu Dhabi, and then I moved to Dubai, and I have been living here for about 9 years. And in the future, I hope to, okay? So it's not a long blah, 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 blah answer. It's still a quick answer to a simple question. But boom, I got my grammatical range in that simple question. So it's a good trick. It's a good thing for you to do in both the writing and in the speaking test, is to use past, present, and future to answer questions. Okay? Now, let's move on. These are the band descriptors themselves, and most of you are probably shooting for a band 7 or higher. So if we'll just take a quick look under task achievement at band score 7, you'll see it says covers the requirements of the task. You did your job. You answered the question. Okay? Now, you notice A, academic, overview, and general training, purpose. Remember I just said that before? So you have to have those things to get a 7. Move over to coherence and cohesion. Organizes information, clear progression. First, second, third. One, another, next. A clear progression. It must be there. And the easiest way to show the progression is by using those types of words, okay? And notice the next bullet point says uses a range of cohesive devices. So you can't just say next, 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 another, another, another. No, range. First, second, third, one, another, next. It's what I drill into my students. If you have 2 separate paragraphs, in one say the first example, first example, the second example, the third example. Next paragraph say one example, another example, the next example. First, second, third, one, another, next. There, you've got your range of those devices and you've used them to introduce your examples. That'll get you a band score 7, or it'll get you a long way towards a 7, because if you do not have those 2 elements, you'll never get a 7. Okay? Again, if you do not have it organized with the progression, you won't get a 7. Notice it says it right here, 7, you have to have the progression. If you don't use those words, you will not get a 7. And if you only use 1 or 2 of those words, that's not a range. You have to have a range of those words, a variety of those words. If you do not, you will not get a 7. So these are simple ways. Look back at the task achievement. You must have the overview and the academic to get a 7. Coherence and cohesion, you must have the progression. Okay, these things are right here in the band descriptors. If you don't do them, it won't happen. Lexical resource, range of vocabulary. Okay, you can't just repeat the boy, the boy, the boy. Use different words. Say he, use his name, Ahmed, or say Miriam's brother. Don't just say the boy over and over again. Use different ways to say the same thing. Okay? Now, that's that range of vocabulary. That means not repeating the same words over and over again. And less common lexical, the next bullet point. So I gave you an example of that already. Instead of it went up, you say the temperature increased significantly. That's less common. That's what you need to do. Now we move on to grammatical range and accuracy, variety of complex structures. Now those are words like because, since, if, when, who, which, if, I said that already, might, may, all those words. I'll talk a lot more about those in a bit, but what it basically means is how you explain your examples. So you go back to coherence, you say the first example of a cause of air pollution are automobiles. And they cause air pollution because there's your complex structure. And you're going to explain how cars cause air pollution by using that word because. Because they burn fuel and create smoke, and that gets in the air, and people breathe it, and it gets on buildings, and that air pollution is very damaging. So you've explained. You haven't just said cars cause air pollution. Okay, that's true. But what you want to say is the first cause, the first significant, the first main, the first major cause of air pollution are cars because, and explain why. Okay? So you want a 7, those are the key things you have to do. You have to They're right here. You have to do them. And you have the task 2 are very similar. Band score 7, all addresses the task, logically organizes, range of vocabulary, a variety of complex structures. Okay? So, academic writing task 1. Now, we're starting with academic task 1 because there are 4 writing tasks. Okay? So academic 1 and 2, and general training 1 and 2. That's 4. Academic 1 is different than the other 3. Okay? Academic 1 is different than the other 3. Now, I'll tell you the difference. In academic 1, you want to say what, where, and when. Whatever you're writing about, you need to say what I'm writing about, where it is, and when it happened. Okay? In the other 3, academic 2, general training 1 and 2, you want to say what, where, when, and why. You have to have the reason it happened. But academic 1, you never give the reason. So that's how it's different. What, where, when. The other 3, what, where, when, and why. So let's have a look. So the structure, you have your introduction where you paraphrase the question. You have an overview, that brief summary, and then paragraphs 3 and 4. It might be 3, it might be only a third paragraph, but it might be third and fourth. You describe, support, and compare key features. Key features means only the most important things that are in the graph, table, chart, or diagram. You don't want to present all of the information, just the key features. So you get your graph like this one. The chart below shows the number of men and women in further education in Britain in 3 periods and whether they were studying full-time or part-time. Who? What? Right? What? Men and women in further education. Where? Britain. When? 3 time periods. What, where, when? Now, you could also say who. Who and what are the same thing. Who is it? It's men and women. What is it? It's men and women. Okay? Who, what, when, and where. Okay? It's right there in that first statement, and that is also your introduction. You can't copy it word for word. You have to paraphrase it, but the information that you have to present in your introduction is right there in that first statement. So now notice the next one says summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons more relevant. Select and report the main features. That means not every piece of information. We don't need all of these dates and numbers for each of these categories that we see in this graph. We need the main things. And if we look at it's the change over time. So it's reduced to 4 changes over time. The change in time of male part-time students and male full-time students, and the change over time of female part-time students and female full-time students. And the time is 1970 to 1990. Okay? That's the when. The where is Britain, and the who or what is students, part-time and full-time, male and female students. So let's have a look. So we want to paraphrase the question. So we have the who, what, where, and when. Remember, never say why in academic task 1. Never give your opinion. Never say what you think about it. Never. Never. Okay? You do not give an opinion. You do not give a reason why. Never. If you do, you will not score a 7. You probably won't score a 6. It's a serious penalty. You must not do it. So then the overview, right? The overview is that summary, generalizes the most important information. So what's the overall trend? Did it increase? It went higher, it went up, or it decreased? Or there were significant differences? So to sum up, in summary, overall, make it very clear where your overview is. So if your highest score in task achievement with no overview is a 5. Remember I said you'll never get a 7? Okay, no clear overview, you'll get a 5. It's very important. So here's an example of an overview. Overall, many more people pursued further education part-time rather than full-time. No numbers, no examples. It's a summary. So you don't give examples, you just say what happened. Also, the number of both men and women involved in further education increased in full-time education, while in part-time learning, the numbers went down for men and up for women. There's no numbers, there's no dates. It's just generally what happened. Now, we do have the key features. We had 4 of them, remember? Part-time men and women and full-time men and women, 4. So we have to say when it happened, but we don't want to repeat. Remember that range of words? We don't want to just repeat from 1970 to 1990. But we say that the first time, and then we say the second time during these 30 years, over the same time period, over the same period, and in these 3 decades. So we can present our information using a variety, a range of vocabulary. So from 1970 to 1990, the number of part-time male students decreased sharply, good vocabulary, from about 1 million to just over 800,000, then increased again to approximately. During these 30 years, now our second one, number of female part-time students increased significantly to about 1.1 million. Over this same period, here's our third one, number of male full-time students more than doubled to over 200,000. Additionally, in these 3 decades, there's our fourth one, number of female full-time students stayed almost the same at just over 200, despite a slight dip in 1980. So we've introduced our 4 key examples, and we have given information about each one of them. But is there anything about why this happened? Not a thing. You must not say why it happened. All it is, academic task 1, is a report. That's all it is. It's a report. So we can use language to explain. So increased significantly, decreased sharply, increased by 100%, doubled from 2, slight, some, significant. Fluctuations, good vocabulary. Was and then, showing change over time. So all of this is good vocabulary. And this vocabulary will work for different graphs and tables and charts, not just this one. So make sure you pay attention to this vocabulary. Maybe you can use it in your paper on your test. So the structure again, you have that introduction, which is a paraphrase of the question, then the overview, which is a brief summary, and then you describe, support, and compare the key features. That's your paragraphs 3. In our example, back here, that's only 1 paragraph. So you'd have your introduction, your overview, and here are the 3 examples, and that's it. Oh, excuse me, 4 examples. Sorry, the 4 key features. So there's our structure and an example, especially of the paragraph with the key features and support, which is the data that you need to report. Remember, it's a report. You must not say why. Now, general training writing task 1. What, where, when, and why. The purpose. So, the structure, we have 3 bullet points that you're always given 3 bullet points. So you have to, in your introduction, you must address the first one. Now, informal, it would be dear blank. So you'd say, dear Bill, dear Achman, dear Susan, whatever. Or more formal, you'd say, dear sir or madam. And then your purpose must be right there. Dear sir or madam, I'm writing to complain about. I'm writing because of. I'm writing to invite you. I'm writing about the meeting we had yesterday. Okay, whatever it is, you make it very clear right away why you are writing. Then the second and third bullet points, and then your conclusion, which is what you want to happen. I really hope you can get back to me. I'd like to hear from you soon. Please respond. I hope you can come to the party. Right? Say what you want to happen. Then in closing, just regards, yours sincerely, best wishes. Be careful. Regards is generic. It works for everything. Okay? But be careful that you don't sign it like love and kisses. That would be inappropriate, and there are penalties for inappropriate language. So, highest score if you do not cover the 3 bullet points would be a 4. Okay, serious penalty. You must cover the 3 bullet points. Does not cover all of them, band score of 4. So here's our example. You live in a room in college which you share with another student. However, there are many problems with this arrangement and you find it very difficult to work. Write a letter to the accommodation officer at the college. In the letter, describe the situation, bullet point 1. Explain your problems, why it's difficult to work, bullet point 2. Say what kind of accommodation you prefer, bullet point 3. There are always 3 bullet points. Now, that paragraph, you live in a room in college which you share, that is that's your question prompt, and that's also your introduction. That tells us what, where, when, and you have to supply why. Okay, you have to say what the problems are and why it's difficult to work. It even says it right there, right? Say what kind, explain your problems and why it's difficult to work. So, I'm a student at this university and live in the residence hall, but now I'm having difficulties with my roommate, which makes it tough for me to continue with my studies. I would really like to move to a different room. There we go. What, where, when, and why am I writing? I want to move. Who, what? I'm a student. Where? Residence hall. When? Now? Why? I'd really like to move. Okay? What, where, when, and very importantly, why? That purpose, which is absolutely essential. So, if you do not have a purpose, you get a 4 in task achievement. Fails to explain the purpose of the letter. Serious penalty. Now, when you're trying to decide what the problems are, write them down on the paper in the paper-based test, on your notes, on your laptop, on the tabletop and the computer delivered, or pull a notepad down in the writing test on your monitor and type in and put some examples down. Wet towels on floor, AC on, windows open, doesn't lock the door, etc. Because you want to only give the strongest, most important examples. And you probably wouldn't need 6 examples, but you put them down anyway. Is snores loudly as important as doesn't lock the door? It might be annoying, but I think if your roommate doesn't lock the door, that's a pretty serious problem, more than if he or she snores, right? So rank them. Put them in the order of importance. Which one do you think is the most important? Now, you might not agree with me, but I put doesn't lock the door as number 1. So that's the first one I would write about. The first problem I have with my roommate is that he doesn't lock the door, and this is a problem because someone could come into the room and steal our things, and this would make it very difficult for me to continue to be a student on this campus. See what I did there? I introduced my example, the first example, right? My roommate doesn't lock the door, and there's the example. So I use that sequencing word, that progression, first, second, third. The first example, the reason that, right? First problem I have with my roommate is he doesn't lock the door, and this is a problem because there's my complex structure. And then I explain why. So it's like, right? My explanation, my opinion, my ideas about why it's a problem. I don't just say, he doesn't lock the door. Remember, I have to put it in order, sequence, I have to use good vocabulary, and I have to have that complex structure. So the first problem I have with my roommate is that he doesn't lock the door, and this is a problem because blah, blah, blah. Explain why it's a problem. Okay? That's what you have to do. Now, if you can explain like that, you won't need 6 examples because an explanation like that is going to take 3 or 4 lines on your paper, and you only need to write 20 lines. So you might only have 3 or possibly 4 examples, and that'll be more than enough to get you the words that you need for your task 1, which is 150 words, which is about 20 lines. So when you give your examples, make sure you stay on the topic. Choose the right tone. Okay? Tone must be consistent. Use more formal language in a formal letter and use friendly, informal language in a personal letter. And don't mix them up. Don't, I'm writing to invite you to a birthday party, and if you don't come, I'll punch you in the nose. Well, you're threatening. That's not the right tone. An invitation to a party should be a nice tone. But here in this example, problems with my roommate, you don't want to say I'm having problems with my roommate, but he's a really nice guy, but he doesn't lock the door. You don't want to mix up good things and bad things. It tells you it's problems, so stick with problems, only problems. Okay? Be careful of that, because if your tone is inappropriate, get a 4 again. The tone inappropriate. So being happy when you're supposed to be angry, right? Or like I mentioned before, signing your letter, love and kisses, okay? Or, if you say, dear sir or madam, hi, how are you? No, it's a formal letter. You don't start a formal letter with, hi, how are you? Now, if you said, dear Bill, we really want, hi, how are you? We haven't seen you for a while. I'd like to invite you to little Billy's birthday party. That's fine. In an informal letter, hi, how are you is fine, but not in a formal letter. That's your tone. So if it's inappropriate, you'll get a 4 in task achievement, serious penalty. Now, progression and support. Remember that progression? First, second, third. The most important problem I have with my roommate is he does not lock the door, so someone could come into the room and steal my things. So that's a complex structure. If this happened, it would be very difficult to continue studying. There's another one, if. The next problem I have with him is that he leaves the AC on and the windows open, which makes our electricity bill much higher than it should be. Okay? So the most important, next, there's our sequencing words. We have doesn't lock the door, AC on and windows open. There's our examples. And we have our complex structures. So, if, which, and then the explanation. Be very difficult to continue studying. Electricity bill much higher than it should be. So, you don't just say, he doesn't lock the door, and he leaves the AC on. Just giving the 2 examples isn't good enough. You have to sequence them. You have to give the example. Then you have to have your complex structure and explain. Okay? Very important. If you do not have that progression, your highest score will be a 5. Lack of progression. The first example, the next example, another example. The first problem, another problem. The most important problem. Okay. Now, those cohesive devices, the most important, the first, another, in addition, next, right? You have to have a variety of them. Don't just repeat. Moreover, moreover, moreover. For some reason, that's every student's most popular word, moreover, and I don't know why. I almost never use it. So, but it's not a bad word, but don't overuse it. Regardless of what word you use, don't overuse anything. Your conclusion, 1 or 2 sentences, say what you want to happen. Please get back to me right away. I look forward to hearing from you. I really hope you can come to the party. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be in touch with you again shortly. What you want to happen has to be there. I'm writing about the meeting we had yesterday. Goodbye. I'm writing about the meeting we had yesterday. We talked about this. We talked about that. You were going to do this. I was going to do that. I really hope to hear from you soon. Conclusion, I really hope to hear from you soon. Get back to me as soon as you can. Thank you very much. Regards, Mark. Okay? So, what you want to happen has to be there. So the structure, introduction, dear, why you're writing, the purpose has to be there in the introduction. I'm writing to invite you. I'm writing about. In the second and third bullet points, and then the conclusion, what you want to happen. Now, writing test 2 actually has a very similar structure, but let's look at it by our paragraphs first. We have a topic sentence for each paragraph. So, right, first I'm going to discuss the causes of air pollution. I haven't given any causes. I've just introduced the topic of that paragraph. That's what a topic sentence does. Then think of examples to support that, then put them in order, and then give that extra information and your opinion. Now remember, you have to give information from your own knowledge and experience. That means don't say, in the New York Times of October 20th, there was an article that discussed, no, don't say that. You can write, I remember reading in the newspaper about, now it's your information because you're remembering it. But you can't put a quote from a newspaper or from a TV show. You can't do it. It has to be your own knowledge or experience. So you can use a quote from the New York Times, but just say, I remember reading about, and then say what it was about without quoting it or referring to the date or the publication where you got the information. So structure, introduction, paraphrase the question, put your position. It's very important, your position, what you think about it. Okay? Then your body paragraph 1, a related group of examples on one part of the question. Body paragraph 2, related group of examples on another part of the question, and your conclusion. So for example, introduction, causes, solutions, conclusion. 4 paragraphs. Typically 4 paragraphs, task 2. Usually 4 paragraphs. Might be 5, rarely 3, almost always 4. So our introduction. A good type of introduction is a 3-part introduction. So you begin with a neutral statement. Then you paraphrase the question. Then you say what the essay will discuss. Let me give you an example. Every year, more and more students choose to study online rather than attend traditional classes at a school or institution. What do you think are the causes of this, and what solutions can you suggest? Okay. Studying online is becoming increasingly popular. Okay. That's neutral statement. Just what's the topic? Studying online. Becoming increasingly popular. Do you know what I think about it? No, you don't have a clue. And each year, more students opt to study online as opposed to attending classes on campus. That, number 2, is directly from the question up above. Every year, more and more students. Each year, more students opt to. Okay? And then this essay will discuss, okay, what are we doing? Where are we going? Where are we going? Discuss the reasons, put forward solutions. So 1, 2, and 3. It's not 3 sentences. It's not 3, or even a question and 2 sentences. It's 3 parts. Neutral statement, paraphrase the question. Where are we going? What's the essay going to do? This essay will. So again, neutral statement, paraphrase the question, state what the essay will discuss and your position. Another one, some people believe studying on campus is the most effective way to learn, while others believe that studying online is more effective. To what extent do you agree or disagree with these statements? Good. Why is it that the effectiveness of studying online instead of on a campus is debated? There's our neutral question. It's a statement. 2, some people believe it's much more effective than traditional learning, while others do not. There's our paraphrase of the question. And then 3, this essay will discuss both sides of the argument in detail, providing specific examples of the effectiveness of both. So, 3-part. Neutral statement, paraphrase the question. This essay will. So, each body paragraph has to have a topic sentence and makes it very clear what the main idea will be. First, I'd like to discuss some of the positive aspects of television. Very clear. This paragraph will be about what? The positive aspects of TV. It's very clear. Then we have to introduce and sequence your examples. The first example, another, the next. Remember those sequencing words, that progression? Initially, as you can see, all of these words, great for sequencing your examples. Then you have to have your complex structures, right? You have to have a range of them, a variety of them. So what complex structures do is they make your writing more interesting. It adds information, details, demonstrates your range of sentence types, and it helps you achieve a higher score. Without them, you'll never get a 7. And here are 12 of them. Since, if, when, which, who, that, while, whereas, rather than, where, so that, even though, and of course, because, right? Because isn't even here. Because it's the most common one used, isn't it? Of course it is. But you don't, remember, you have to have a variety of them. Okay, the more information you provide, the better. The more you explain your examples, the better. You must explain, explain, explain. The more you explain, if you give only one example and you're able to explain it and fill up a whole paragraph, you don't need 2 or 3 examples because you wrote enough explanation with only one example. Now, typically people need 2 examples to write enough, to explain enough. But some people, 1 is enough, only one example, because they can explain thoroughly. If you do not have those complex structures, the highest score you'll get in grammar, grammatical range, and accuracy is a 6, a mix of simple and complex. And if you only have simple, you'll get even lower. You have to have them if you want a good score. So how and why do we use them? They're used to give extra information to explain and support our examples. Television is relaxing, which makes it a favorite activity for many people. Because television is relaxing, it's a favorite activity for many people. Since television helps us relax, it's become a favorite activity for many people. All it's doing here is giving extra information to the idea, the basic idea that television is relaxing. Okay? So, and we're adding to that and giving more information. And that's what you need to do. Every example you give, explain it and give extra information. Don't just give the example, give an explanation. So, we look at the question prompt carefully before we start to write. So if we look at this, some people feel the positive aspects of television are more important than the negative aspects. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? That means you must discuss both the positive and the negative. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Means you must have why you agree and why you disagree. Okay? Now, an easy way to do that is to give examples of both sides of the question. So, we have our introduction first. Television's been an important part of people's lives for a very long time. Most people would agree that there are both positive and negative aspects of television. Although there are some problems with watching television, overall, I believe there are more benefits. 3-part introduction. So, problems and benefits. We're going to discuss both of them. So, sequence our examples. The first benefit of television is that it's entertaining. The first, there's a sequencing word. It's entertaining. There's our example. This is good because we laugh. There's our complex structure. Next one, another. There's a sequencing word. Television, very important. Helps me learn. There's our example. It's good to learn. So TV helps. There's my complex structure. A third, there's our sequencing word. Spend free time. There's my example. When I'm busy, there's my complex structure. Okay? So we don't just say it's entertaining, helps me learn, and it's a way to spend free time. You don't just give your examples. You have to sequence them and explain them. You can add more details. First benefit, good because we laugh. I like to laugh. Another positive aspect, it's good to TV helps. So TV helps. I think this is important. A third factor, when I spend free time, when I'm busy, this helps me. More information, more explanation, opinions. Opinions are great to use. Remember, your own ideas or experience, these are your ideas. This is your experience. I like to laugh. So you add that. So that would be 74 words if we made that into a paragraph. Television is beneficial in several ways. That's my topic sentence. The first, another, the third. 3 examples, 74 words. Not bad. Now, what about stronger vocabulary and more support? Only 2 examples here. The first benefit is that it's entertaining. Sense, there's my complex structure. In my opinion, there's my explanation. In my opinion, this is the most important thing about television. It explains why people have always liked to watch it. I explain, explain, explain. The more you can explain, the fewer examples you need. Another positive aspect helps me learn, right? For example, which broaden our minds and this productive use of our time. Explain, explain, explain. That's 93 words. 93. If we put our topic sentence, it's 106 words. Okay? Only 2 examples. The other one with 3 examples, you remember? 74 words. And that was 3 examples in a topic sentence. Now, because I'm explaining more and more and more, but the structure's the same. Sequence your example with a complex structure and explanation. Sequence your example with a complex structure and explanation. Sequence your example with a complex structure and an explanation. And here I've only used 2 examples, entertaining and helps me learn, but I've explained a lot, and I've got 106 words. Much stronger, much better. Now, if I decided to put 3 examples, right, a third significant factor is that television is an excellent way to spend free time. So I've decided to put a third example, and I'm writing, and I'm writing, and I'm up to 165 words. Now, there's nothing wrong with that except time, because this is only the positive parts of TV, and we also have to write about the negative. So 1, will we have time? Now, if you wrote 3 examples, you might not have time to write a full part of the negative things. You're running out of time, and you write it quickly and short. Maybe you don't even have time to write a conclusion. So don't overwrite. 2 examples would be enough. Here, 106 words. We do have to have the negative, and we also give 2 examples of those. There are also negative issues involved with television. One of the most significant problems is there's a sequencing words. It makes people lazy. There's our example. When people sit and watch, there's a complex structure, which is a terrible thing to happen. Another one. Also, sequencing word, television hurt our health. And there have been examples through the years of people with bad hearing, and I say, because there's a complex structure, in my opinion, explanation. Sequence your example with a complex structure and an explanation. Here are 2 examples, 92 words. So we don't need 3 examples. And our conclusion. As you can see, there are clearly both positive and negative issues regarding that wonderful invention, television, but I feel very strongly that the positive aspects far outweigh the negative. I'm confident in stating, and TV was popular in the past, it's popular now, and I'm positive it will continue to be popular well into the future. Notice what I did there? I just threw in a little past, present, and future. Remember I talked about that before? Just to show off a little bit. 60-word conclusion. So if we put it all together, there we go. Now, notice how I've indented each paragraph. I moved it over. In the paper-based test, please indent your paragraphs. Okay, like this. It makes it very easy to see. If I said to you, how many paragraphs, you'd say 4. But if you did not, now here we can see there are 4, but imagine this was on paper instead of done on a computer, and you wouldn't have that little gap between your paragraphs. That would disappear. And so it'd be difficult, especially paragraph 2 and paragraph 3, to tell where one started and one ended. Where paragraph 2 ends and where paragraph 3 begins. So on a paper-based test, please indent your paragraphs to make it very, very clear. On the computer-delivered test, it doesn't matter because you can just hit the Enter key and add an empty line. And again, you want to make it very clear where your paragraphs are. It's just that it's easier to do that in the computer-delivered test. So we need to understand the topic, how many parts and how many paragraphs. Now, how many parts is usually 2. In this case, it was the positive and the negative. The number of paragraphs is usually 4. Introduction, positive, negative, conclusion, 4 paragraphs. 2 parts, 4 paragraphs. Those complex structures, make sure your position is clear and give examples, ideas, extra information, opinions, explain, explain, explain. So our type of task 2 question prompts. Make sure you understand it before you start to write. We just saw one, positive and negative, right? But there are others. So how many body paragraphs will each one need? Let's look. Opinion essay. Some people believe the increasing popularity of shopping as a leisure activity is a positive trend. To what extent do you agree or disagree? To what extent always is 2 parts. So we have introduction, then we have to say why we agree with shopping as a leisure activity. Here's paragraph 2. Paragraph 3, why we disagree with shopping as a leisure activity. And a conclusion, 4 paragraphs. 2 parts, why we agree, why we disagree, 4 paragraphs. Introduction, agree, disagree, conclusion. If it says to what extent, it means you must discuss both. Okay? If I said to you, do you want tea or coffee? Tea or coffee, that's only 1. But if I say, and like here, to what extent do you agree or disagree? If I said to you, do you agree or disagree? You choose 1. But to what extent do you agree or disagree means how much do you agree and why, and how much do you disagree and why. You must discuss both. Now, the next one, discussion essay. Some people believe the increasing popularity of shopping as a leisure activity is a positive trend. Others believe it's harmful to individuals. Discuss both these views and give your own opinion. Discuss both. It's very clear. Introduction, shopping is positive. Others believe shopping is harmful. Conclusion. Introduction, helpful, harmful, conclusion. 4 parts. 4 paragraphs, excuse me. 2 parts, 4 paragraphs. Almost always you have 2 parts, 4 paragraphs. Positive, negative, introduction, positive, negative, conclusion. Here, 4 paragraphs. Discussion, multi-part question. Why is shopping so popular? What effects does it increase in popularity have on individuals and society? Introduction, why is shopping so popular? What effects does it have? Conclusion. 2 parts, 4 paragraphs. These are the most common essay types. Almost every essay you ever receive will be 2 parts, which means 4 paragraphs. Problems with the increasing popularity of shopping. What form do these problems take? Do the problems outweigh the benefits? Okay? So, introduction, problems, benefits, conclusion. So, structure. At introduction, with the paraphrase of the question prompt, it states your position. It must be clear. The body paragraph is one part of the question, body paragraph 1. Body paragraph 2 is another part of the question. And then your conclusion, where you repeat the most important information. Make sure your position is very clear. Okay? So, that was just under an hour. That was 56 minutes, I think. So, let's look back here quickly, because this part needs to be drilled into you. Types of task 2 question prompts. Make sure it's clear. We saw positive, negative. Of television, the positive things and the negative things. Introduction, the positive aspects, the negative aspects. Conclusion, 4 paragraphs. Introduction, why you agree, why you disagree. Conclusion. Discussion. Introduction, one view, the other view, conclusion, 4 paragraphs. Multi-part, introduction, one part, the other part, conclusion, 4 paragraphs. Multi-part plus opinion. It just means you explain more. Introduction, one question, the other question, conclusion, 4 paragraphs. Okay? These are by far the most common. That 3-part introduction is a great way to do your introduction. Then so your introduction, you introduce the topic, paraphrase the question prompt, and then say where this essay will. Talk about one part of the question, the other part, and conclusion. As you can see, I feel very strongly that. There's your position. Make it very clear. Repeat that information. Sum up your position. Okay, we're going to take a break now. Just be a short break, about 5-6 minutes. It's 7:21, and we'll move on and keep moving and get to your questions as soon as we can. All right? Thank you very much. I'll see you in just a few minutes. Walked around a little bit. Listen up. Let's get right back to it. We're going to talk just a little bit there about changing the screen there. So, why handwrite when you can type? Computer-delivered IELTS is now available. One of the key things is this results in 3 to 5 days. That's fantastic. More test dates and availability. Face-to-face speaking test. You can take the academic or the general training in the computer. Listening, reading, and writing tests completed on the computer. And you have free computer-delivered IELTS practice materials and videos. So you can not only prepare for the test, you can do it from the comfort of your own home. Okay? Great opportunity for you. Now, computer-delivered IELTS available throughout the region, as you can see here, in all of the locations in UAE, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Pakistan, and Oman. And the number of locations that offer it is growing all the time. I heard today, I won't say which country, actually 2 different countries are opening brand new computer-delivered test centers in the next few days. So not only do you have all of these locations, there will be more soon. Okay? Now, that's a great opportunity for you. It's more places to take the test. It's completely secure, and it's also safe in these days of coronavirus. Okay? So consider the options available to you, and do what you can to make your test taking as non-stressful as possible. Personally, the computer-delivered test, I strongly feel, is a much better option for people to take. Now let's move on. We already discussed the writing test. Let's look at the listening test next. Now, on the paper-based test, you have an answer sheet like this. Now you also have your question booklet, and you'll write your answers in the question booklet, and then you have to transfer them here. You can make mistakes transferring answers, and I see it happen all the time. In the computer-delivered test, you don't have this transfer issue because you're typing your answers directly into the question paper on your sheet. Now, there are some things we want to take into account here. Now, 4 of these things hurt your score, and 1 of them does not. Do you know which is which? If you leave a question blank, or you misspell, or you make a grammar mistake, or you have capital, uppercase, lowercase, capital letters, and word limits. Now, only 1 of those doesn't matter. Do you know which it is? Actually, I'll go through them. If you leave a question blank, it will be counted wrong, so that will hurt you. If you misspell, it's wrong, that will hurt your score. If your grammar is wrong, that will hurt your score. And then the last one, if you exceed the word limit, that will hurt your score. But it's that 4th one, uppercase letters, it doesn't matter. They do not care if you use uppercase or lowercase letters in your answer. It has to be spelled correctly, but they do not care if you use uppercase or lowercase letters. Okay? So that's a helpful thing to know. Now, listening activities, right? You hear examples from listening tests, you listen to instructions, you write your examples, your answers on the sample listening question paper. Now, people, anytime you do test prep, this happens. You do it in this sequence. Now, something I would like you to do is when you do it, the first couple of times that you do a listening activity, I don't want you to look at the question paper. Okay? Don't want you to look at the questions. I just want you to listen to the recording, because I want you to realize that they're discussing something. They're talking about something. It's either a conversation or a presentation. Now, if you understand what they're talking about, you'll understand the information and the specific examples that they give. But if all you're doing is listening for the answers to questions, you don't even hear what they're talking about. And that can be the difference between answering questions correctly or incorrectly. Now, in your test preparation activities, you can just listen to the conversation, and I bet you'll find that you understand the conversation or the presentation almost 100%. But if you look at the questions while you're listening, you start to get a bit confused, and you won't really understand. You might answer the questions correctly, but remember that understanding what they're talking about will help you answer the questions correctly. So in your test preparation activities, just the first couple of ones that you listen to, just listen to the conversation. Then listen to it with the question paper. And I think you'll find you got a lot more of them correct. Once you understand what they're talking about, answering the questions is easy. So it's kind of a trick. Now you cannot do that on the day of the test because you have to have the questions because you have to answer them. But what I'm talking about is starting to listen for more than just the answers. And then the activity becomes easier for you. So in your test preparation, you can do a practice where you just listen to the conversation. Then you can do the real test prep where you answer the questions. It's just a way to get used to hearing what they're talking about instead of just answering the questions. Now, on a typical answer sheet like this one, you'd have 30 seconds to listen, to read it, to look at it before you see the record or hear the recording. I'm sorry. Now, here where you see Jacob and then the number 1, on the computer delivered test, that would be a box where the number 1 is. The number 1 would be in the box. You would click on that box and you would type, obviously, Jacob's last name would be the answer to the question. Name, Jacob, something, and you would answer that question. Okay? So what would the question be? That's what the 30 seconds gives you the opportunity to do, is to anticipate what questions you're going to hear. So name, they're not just going to say name, they're going to ask a question. What's your name? Can you tell me your name? Please tell me your name. Please give me your name, right? There's a variety of questions they can ask, but basically it's going to be a variation on what's your name? Then your address. Can you give me your address? Okay. Postcode. What is the postcode? Please give me the postcode, something like that. So you get 30 seconds to read through this quickly to anticipate the questions you're going to hear. All right? Now we get down there, length. Now that's not a question word. The question word would be how long is the box? And then width, question word wide. How wide is the box? And height. How high is the box or how deep is the box? So different words for different measurements. And then contents. What are you shipping? What are you sending in the box? What are you packing in the box? Something like that. Clothes, and then what else? 6 and 7. What would be in that box? Think, okay, maybe this, maybe that. What do you think would be in there? Just click, click, click. Think about it. They're sending clothes. What else would they send? And then the value, okay? A number. Now, when they give a number, they usually give 3 or 4 numbers, but only one of them would be correct. Now, what they might say here is, well, the total value, well, the clothes are worth 100 pounds. The books are worth 50 pounds. The toys are worth 60 pounds. So the total is 210 pounds. So that was 4 numbers, 100, 50, 60, 210. So don't just write down the first number you hear because this says total. So make sure you listen to all the numbers, decide which is the correct answer, and then write down that correct answer or type it, depending on which test you take. Remember, anticipate those questions, review your vocabulary, and try to predict the language you will hear. So we're going to listen to this one. Now, in your book, it should be page 17, though they just republished the booklet. I don't have my copy here. I'm not sure where it is, sorry. But it's going to be close to page 17, if it isn't page 17. So turn to that page where this activity is and listen along and answer the questions.
Section 3. You will hear part of a seminar entitled Understanding the World's Oceans, given by a climate scientist. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25 on pages 5 and 6. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Thanks to all of you for coming along today to hear about how the Robotic Float project is helping with ocean research. Well, first of all, we'll look at what a robotic float does and its use. So let's start with the device itself. It looks a bit like a cigar, and it's about 1.5 meters long. More importantly, it's full of equipment that's designed to collect data. So it can help us in building up a profile of different factors which work together within the world's oceans.
Sounds like a big project. Isn't it too big for one country to undertake?
That's quite true, but this project is a really good example of international cooperation. Over the last 5 years, scientists from 13 countries have been taking part in the project and launching floats in their area of ocean control. And next year, this number will rise to 14 when Indonesia joins the project.
That's impressive.
But let's move on to how floats work. The operational cycle goes like this. Each of the floats is dropped in the ocean from a boat at a set point and activated from a satellite. Then the float immediately sinks about 2,000 meters. That's 2 whole kilometers down in the water. It stays at this depth for about 10 days and is carried around by the currents which operate in the ocean at this level. During this time, it's possible for it to cover quite large distances, but the average is 50 kilometers.
So, what is it actually recording?
Well, at this stage, nothing. But as it rises to the surface, it collects all sorts of data. Most importantly, variations in salinity, that's salt levels, and the changes in temperature, a bit like underwater weather balloons. Then, when it gets back to the surface, all the data it's collected is beamed up to the satellite. After about 5 hours on the surface, the float automatically sinks, beginning the whole process again.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30 on page 7. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
What happens to the data?
Well, the information is transferred direct to onshore meteorological stations, like our one in Hobart. And within 4 hours, the findings can be on computers, and they can be mapped and analysed.
You say you're building models of the world's ocean systems, but how are they going to be used? And more importantly, when?
Some of the data has already helped in completing projects. For example, our understanding of the underlying causes of El Niño events is being confirmed by float data. Another way we're using float data is to help us to understand the mechanics of climate change, like global warming and ozone depletion. That's part of an ongoing variability study, but the results are still a long way off. However, this is not the case with our ocean weather forecasting. Because we know from the floats what the prevailing weather conditions will be in certain parts of the ocean, we can advise the Navy on search and rescue missions. That's happening right now, and many yachtsmen owe their lives to the success of this project. In addition, the float data can help us to look at the biological implications of ocean processes.
Would that help with preserving fish stocks?
Yes, and advising governments on fisheries legislation. We're well on the way to completing a project on this. We hope it will help to bring about more sustainable fishing practices. We'll be seeing the results of that quite soon.
It sounds like the data from floats has lots of applications.
Yes, it does. It's also a powerful agricultural tool. If we were aware of what the weather would be like, say, next year, we could make sure that the farmers planted appropriate grain varieties to produce the best yield from the available rainfall.
That sounds a bit like science fiction, especially when now we can't even tell them when a drought will break.
I agree that this concept is still a long way in the future, but it will come eventually, and the float data will have made a contribution.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Okay, so I played it to the end on purpose because I wanted you to hear that you got 30 seconds at the beginning, and then you got the whole time it was playing, and then you got 30 seconds at the end as well. So that's very valuable time, and you need to use that to your advantage. Okay, so definitely they give you a lot of time to both read, to think, to listen, and then to review and check your answers. So let's look at
Section
the
3.
correct answers. Sorry about that. So 21 was cigar. It has to be spelled correctly. It sounds like an S, but it's spelled with a C. So 13 can be the number or the word, and countries has to be plural. You don't have to have both the number and the word. It's one or the other. Activated, past participle, 50 km. Don't put an S on that, just km, 50 km. Use abbreviations. You could write kilometer, or kilometers. You'd have to put the plural if you wrote the word. But there's no reason to write the word when you can use an abbreviation. Anytime you can, use abbreviations. Now, temperature, now it could be changes in temperature or variations in temperature. You'd have to have the preposition in. And then A, meaning soon, C, far in the future, A, B, near future, and then C again. A, C, A, B, C. Now, did you hear some of the words they used at the bottom there? They used sequencing words, right? For example, right? Another. So they used those sequencing words to introduce. They gave 5 answers, 5 time expressions at the end, and they used sequencing words. Those progression words like we used in the writing test, they used them here. I don't know if you heard them, but they were there. And they also used complex structures, because and if we were aware, okay? They explained, or he, the main speaker, he explained the answers using complex structures. So remember, it's not just in the writing or the speaking that these structures are used. They're also used in the listening, and they're used in the reading test as well. So using them and practicing them will help you hear them and read them. Okay? So, summary. The listening test is the same test for academic and general. You hear the recording once. The paper-based, you get 10 minutes at the end to transfer. In the computer delivered, you have 2 minutes at the end to check your answers. You don't need to transfer, but they do give you 2 minutes to check your work. That's very important, very valuable time. Make sure you use it. Okay? Anytime, in any situation when you're given time to review, take advantage of it. Use it. Now, there are lots of good listening resources out there. Some of them are IDP IELTS web pages like IELTSessentials.com, IDP IELTS.me. IDP IELTS Australia is a great website too. Or TED, right? TED Talks. BBC, it's great videos. You can watch things on weather or cooking or politics or any topic that's interesting to you. Fashion, cars. You can watch videos, listen to audios, or just read news segments. It's a great way to practice. And it's really good if you can read a story and then listen to and watch a video about that same story. So you get the information from two different sources, and that's a terrific way to practice. learningenglish.voanews.com, eslvideo.com, ELLO, the English Listening Lesson Library Online, fantastic resource. And again, TED, the TED Radio Hour. You don't have to listen to all of them, and look through them. Maybe there's one about cars and that's interesting to you, or one about football, or one about fashion, or one about weddings, or one about food. Everybody likes food, right? Find a topic or a story that's even a little bit interesting for you and follow up on it. There's no reason to listen to topics that turn you off, right? When there are thousands of stories and resources available that have interesting topics. Find one that's interesting to you. What are your hobbies? What are you interested in? And I guarantee you can find a video or an audio on that topic. And that's what you should practice. You don't have to practice things that you don't enjoy. When you're practicing, you want to do things that because you enjoy it, you might actually learn something. Or if you don't learn something, it's reviewing something you already know. If you watch clips of football matches and listen to the people talking about the football match, you might already know the score. But if you hear the explanation in English, that will help you. So anything you do, and don't try to sit down and do 2 hours of listening at the same time. Sit down and do 15 minutes, or do 10 minutes, or do 20 minutes. That's all, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then put it away. Do something else. Come back to it later. Don't try to do too much at once. Just do it in small, like bite-sized pieces. If you try to take too much, you choke on it. Take it in bite-sized pieces and spread it out over time. And you'll find that you may actually look forward. You go, oh, that was really interesting what I read yesterday, or what I listened to yesterday, or what I watched yesterday. I wonder what I'll see today. Okay, so try it. Reading test. Similar answer sheet to the listening test. Okay, now, big key difference here though, in the reading test, you don't get the 10 minutes in the paper-based test to transfer your answers. And obviously you don't need it in the computer-delivered test because you're typing your answers directly onto the monitor. But in the paper-based test, you write your answers in your question booklet and then transfer them over here immediately. You can't wait till the end of the test because they do not give you 10 minutes extra. They do in the listening test, but not in the reading test. So the reading test is the most time sensitive of all the tests. Now, if we look at those same questions again here, you already know the answer, right? You know if it's blank, that will hurt your score. You know if it's misspelled or if the grammar's wrong, it'll hurt your score. And you know that if you exceed the word limit, it'll hurt your score. But you also already know that it doesn't matter about capital letters. It doesn't matter if you use uppercase or lowercase. Now, if you look at where the answers are in here, it's just a little space for it. It's not sentences and it's not paragraphs. So rules of writing about where uppercase letters are don't matter, because it's not formal writing. It's just the answer to a question. If the answer was the house, that's not a sentence. It's just a piece of information, and you write here, the house, and you write it in the blank. Or you type it, the house, right? Okay? Doesn't matter if that's uppercase, THEHOUSE, H-O-U-S-E, or small, lowercase letters, T-H-E-H-O-U-S-E. It matters that you spell it correctly. All right, let's move on. You have the timer and the reading test too, but notice it tells you on the wall in the paper-based test, no extra time to transfer answers. You have to remember that. If you go through the whole test and you have not transferred your answers, they will not give you extra time. Now, that's one of the biggest advantages of the computer-delivered test, is while you're reading, you answer it and you're typing, and there's no turning pages, going from one paper to another paper, your booklet to the answer sheet. That doesn't happen. It's right there. Boom, boom, boom. It's very good. But you do have the timer. It starts at 60. You have 3 reading sections. That means you should spend 20 minutes on each one. No more than 20 minutes on each one. So when it gets to 40, it's going to flash on the computer-delivered test, and they're going to say 40 minutes on the paper-based test. And you need to, hopefully you're already on the second reading, but if you're not, move when you hear this number, or move when you see it flash on your monitor, because you must not spend too much time on reading 1, because reading 1 is the easiest of them. So do it first. You'll probably finish in less than 20 minutes. And immediately move on to the second reading. And then when you finish it, move on to the third reading. But if you just wait until the timer or the flashing light or the announcement comes, you're losing time. As soon as you finish reading section 1, move to reading section 2, and hopefully it'll be less than 20 minutes. So you'll get these time checks, and they'll also give you a time check at 10 minutes and at 5 minutes. So how are reading skills tested? Well, they want you to use skills. They're not testing your knowledge, they're testing your skills. And the skills they're testing are skimming, which means finding the main idea, scanning, which is finding specific information, and then reading for detail, which is when you think you have the answer, you read it carefully to make sure it's the correct answer. Now, skimming would be, what's the main idea of this page? It's reading skills. How are they tested? Oftentimes, the main idea is the title of something. Now, scanning would be if I said to you, where's the number 2,200? And you'd look quickly and you'd find it in the bottom left. That was a scanning skill that made you find that number so quickly. That's scanning, looking quickly to find a specific piece of information. And then reading for detail. If I said, how long is the reading? How many words in the reading test? And you would read 2,200 to 2,750 words. You'd read the whole phrase because you're reading for detail to confirm the answer to the question. So skimming, scanning, reading for detail. Those are the 3 things you need to do, because some of your questions you need main ideas. It's skimming, like the main idea of a paragraph. It's usually in the first line. Scanning, a date. It says 1962, and you'd look through the reading, and there it is, 1962. Circle it or highlight it on your computer, and then you would read that sentence for detail to make sure you have the answer. You type in the answer to the question, you'd move on to the next one. Now, like here, if I said the number 3, and you go, oh, that's there, and it's there, and you'd find more than one usage of the number 3. It's easy to find numbers, right? There's 3 sections, section 3, and then 3 sections. 3 times it's used. If I said 60 minutes long, there are 2 examples of that, okay? If I said question types, you'd find that easily because it's headline. It's a headline at the bottom. It's larger font, okay? It's easier to see. But if I said a word like consisting, well, you'd have to find it. So vocabulary words are always more difficult to find. Now, if I said magazines, you'd find that fairly quickly, but you still have to search for it. But a word like graphs, Graphs. And is that with a PH or with an F? Graph. Okay, you might, did he say giraffe? No, he wouldn't say giraffe. He'd say graph. Oh, and then you find it, okay, and you check to see that it's right. But it might be here more than once. So the point here is, if these were questions in your test, a question that has a vocabulary word is more difficult and will take more time to answer than a question that has a number. Because numbers you can find more quickly and therefore you can answer more quickly. Words, vocabulary, take more time to find and therefore more time to answer. So let's look here. This is a general training excerpt of a reading. It's only questions 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, in a section of the reading, when you have a section of questions, we have 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, they are going to be in order in the reading section. Again, when you have a list of questions like this, they're going to be in order in a section of the reading. So we would look for number 4 at the beginning. We'd look for number 8 at the end of the reading section. You can start with any one you want, but let's start with number 4. Now, what has been found in some fancy food products? You look, and right at the beginning, very first line, you look at it, pieces of metal have been found. What's our word limit? We look up at the top, no more than 3 words and or a number. Pieces of metal have been found in some jars. Okay. Pieces of metal, that's the answer to number 4. The paper-based test, we underline it, we write 4. In the computer-delivered test, right next to the number 4, what's been found in fancy food products, there'd be a box with the number 4 in it. We click on that box and we type pieces of metal. That would be our answer. Next one, where can you find the batch number on the jars? Preposition, on the jars. And we look, where is it? You tell me. Where is it on the jars? It's on the bottom. Okay, it's not bottom of each jar. For one thing, that's 4 words. Or bottom of jar. Now, where is it on the jar? It's on the bottom. Please practice prepositions. They're a problem for all of you. I know they are. So practice them. There's a good free listening activity on the website of prepositions. Please practice it. Next one, how much will you receive for an opened jar? So we go down a little bit. The next line we see return them preferably unopened, and then we look and return them to the factory, blah, blah, blah. Each jar returned unopened at $5 for each jar already opened. Opened, $5. How much? $5. 6. Huh? Next one. If you've eaten it, whom should you contact? Whom? It'd be a person or a job, right? The retailing manager. Who? The president. Who? The teacher. Who? The principal. Who? The driver, right? It's a person or a job title in this case, because there's no person's name. You could look through there and say, there's no name here. So what could it be? Oh, but notice it's also in sequence, 4, 5, 6, 7. The retailing manager, no more than 3 words. And the last one, what's the maximum reward? We see at the bottom, reward. So we look under it. Reward of $10,000 to $50,000. So what's the maximum? $50,000. Number 8. So the computer delivered, we would just type our answers in the boxes. The paper-based, we underline, put the numbers on the side. Then we would turn back to our answer sheet, right? Sorry. We'd go back, we'd pull out our answer sheet, we'd write the answers to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. put our answer sheet away, and we'd go on to the next section of the test. Put the answers on the answer sheet. Once you finish a section, transfer them to the answer sheet. That's on the paper-based test. The computer-delivered test, you don't need to do that, which is another reason I recommend that you take the computer-delivered test. You don't have to waste that time going from a booklet to an answer sheet, booklet to an answer sheet, booklet to an answer sheet. It's all right here on your monitor. Now let's look at an academic section. Okay, it's a longer section, but we only have 4 questions, and they are going to be in sequence, in order, in this section of the reading. Just like these were in order, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in sequence, these will be in order too. So we're going to look for the first one at the beginning and the last one near the end. But we look, and what do we have to do? We have to find the country or the people that first invented something or first used it. So what are some words that mean when you first invented or used something? Okay? Can you think of any vocabulary that means that? That first time you did something or the first time it was invented. Invented. Doesn't that mean the first time? Of course it does. But it's our question here. First invented or used them. Black powder. Now we look at our reading section. In the first line, we see black powder. It's right there in the first line. And we read down and say Chinese with its discovery. What's that mean? Discovery. First used it. There's our answer to number 7. If you discover something, it means you're the first, right? So we have answer to 7 here, and we put A here. Number 7, black powder, A. And this is the paper-based test. In the computer-delivered test, you'd have a box there, and you'd type in it A. And you'd move on to number 8. Rocket-propelled arrows for fighting. We'd move down a little bit more, and we rocket-propelled arrows. Here we go. Projectiles. So see, it's vocabulary. Grenades. You know what a grenade is? You throw it, right? So, who did this? Chinese. Okay? A technological development. Okay? So development, right? They developed it. That's the beginning. That's when it started. So that to develop something is to use it first. So number 8, A again, the Chinese. Now 9, rockets as war weapons. We'd look down, okay, we already had Chinese twice, and that's the whole first paragraph. So let's look further down. The war weapons, and here we go. The incentive for more aggressive. Okay, that's war, isn't it? Aggressive. Corps of rocketeers, and used it against the British. So who used it? Indians used it against the British. So B, Indians used it as war weapons first. And then the rocket launcher, number 10. We look down, and launcher is a vocabulary word that doesn't really have many or any synonyms. So we look in there, we find the word launcher. Developed, again, that word developed, the first people to use it. The Americans developed it. So E, so AABE. On the paper-based test, we'd write AABE, then we'd pull out our paper, our answer sheet, and we'd make sure we have 7A, 8A, 9B, 10E, and we put the answer sheet away and we go on to the next section. In the computer delivered, you just typed A, B, E, and you move on. Okay? So they're in order in each section, just like here, right? They're in order in the section. You can write the answers next to the questions or next to the answers. Depends on what style you're comfortable with. Here we have both. The numbers are next to the answers that are underlined, and they're written next to the questions. And here it's underlined and the numbers are there. Because here they're on one page, so it's easy to see where 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are. You could, above at number 4, write pieces of metal, but it takes time to do that, and you've already underlined it. So here, you just have short answers, A, B, right? It's short answers. You have time to write them. Here, you don't really have time to write. And for what's been found in some fancy food products, pieces of metal. You don't need to because you've underlined it below and you've put the number 4. So you know which one is 4, which one is 5, etc. Okay? So use the skimming, scanning, and reading for detail. Answer number questions first. Use abbreviations. Don't waste time. Be willing to skip questions if they're too difficult because you can always come back to them later. And remember, in the paper-based test, you might not remember which question you answered and which one you didn't without pulling out that answer sheet and looking at it, comparing it. You don't want to take the time to do that. So on your question paper, if you did not answer question 12, circle it. So you know the ones that are circled, you didn't answer. So you can come back to it later. And once you do answer it, either erase it or just scribble it out. And you know what that means. It means scribble it out. It means I answered it. Quicker, the quickest way to do it. On the computer-delivered test, number 12, if you haven't answered it, are those numbers across the bottom of the screen, number 12 will be a different color. So you'll know automatically, you'll look and go, oh, number 12, I didn't answer. You click on that number with your mouse, click, and boop, it takes you straight to question 12. It doesn't make the sound boop, but I do. So it'll take you straight to number 12 and then try to answer it. Okay? So another reason the computer-delivered test is what I recommend that you take. So reading test, you have to have a strategy going in. You have to practice in advance. Okay? Please practice. It's typically people's lowest score. Sorry. If you want to read to practice, that would be great. You see the length of this reading, it's 5 paragraphs, but it's very short. It would probably take you 1 minute, 2 minutes to read it. That's the length of reading you want to do. You do not need to read things this long. If you want to, great. Maybe read one of these paragraphs, then go have your lunch, then come back and read the other paragraph. Okay? If you're just doing reading practice, okay? Take it in bite-sized pieces, just like I said with your listening practice. Don't try to read so much that you fall asleep or get burned out. Take it in small bite-sized pieces. That's why descriptions of videos are great because it'll say this, what the video is about. Make sure it's in English and read the description of the video before you click on it on YouTube or on any website that you go to. Sports news, right? Fashion news. The latest from Paris. Okay, you read that. The latest from Paris. Then click on it. Watch the video. Read the story about it. That's it. 10 minutes. And stop. But if you can do 10 minutes on a topic that's interesting to you, and you do 10 minutes once a day or twice a day, great. That's what you need to be doing. Okay? You should not try to sit down and do a 1-hour reading test every day between now and when you take the test. Now, the week before you take the test, take a sample test, the whole thing, but not 2 or 3 weeks before when you're practicing. 2 or 3 weeks before when you're practicing, do it in bite-sized pieces, and it'll be much more helpful to you. Okay? Now, let's move on to the speaking test, the 4th test. We're nearly finished, and then I'll answer some questions. So, how are you scored? Again, band descriptors, fluency and coherence. You're able to stay on topic and keep talking. Lexical resource. Use good vocabulary, grammatical range and accuracy, okay? Try to use past, present, and future when you can. Now, if they said, what's your name? You don't say, well, my name used to be, well, my name used to be Bill, but now it's Mark. It doesn't make sense. But if it's where you live, well, I used to live in Abu Dhabi. What food do you like? Well, I used to eat a lot of junk food, but now I eat healthy food, and I hope in the future I can continue to eat healthy food. Okay. Past, present, future. Grammatical range and accuracy. Oops, sorry. Hit the wrong button. And pronunciation. The examiner needs to be able to understand you. Big part of pronunciation is you should slow down your speaking, especially if your language skills are good. Most people with strong language skills speak too quickly. So, have you understood me speaking to you this evening? I've spoken at a steady pace, not too fast and not too slow. And hopefully you've been able to understand me. Now, there are lots of good things about speaking at a steady pace. Listeners can hear you and understand you easily. Also, by speaking more slowly, you take up more time. The more time you take, the better, okay? Because there's a time limit on the speaking test. There are 3 sections. The first section is 4.5 minutes. If you're speaking really quickly, you have to say more because you're not using your time. You're speaking quickly. But if you slow down a little bit, you don't need to say as much because you're speaking more slowly. It's as simple as that. Okay? There are band descriptors. If we look at band score 7 under fluency and coherence, speaks at length. You just keep talking. Lexical resource, vocabulary resource, wide, right? That you don't use just simple words. You have a good resource, means good vocabulary. Grammatical range and accuracy, complex structures. There it is, range of complex structures. They want you to use because, since, if, when, who. It wants you to use that. In fact, you have to use it to get a 7 or higher. And pronunciation, okay? You need to use intonation and word stress because you can tell how people feel from the sound of their voice, whether they're happy or they're tired from the way their voice sounds, or if they're angry, it comes out in their intonation. And that can help you answer questions, and it can also help you give information. Okay? So let's look here. Introduction of part 1. They're going to ask you simple questions. Well, first they're going to say, where do you live? Something about where you live. And then, or they're going to ask what you do. Okay? They always ask one of those two. Now, if they don't ask both, they'll ask one, like, where do you live? Or where do you live now? Or something like that. And what do you do? Now, where do you live? Don't use abbreviations. Don't say things like, I live in a 2 BHK. No, you don't. Okay? That's an abbreviation. A BHK? No. I live in a 2-bedroom flat. Fine. I live in a 3-bedroom house. Fine. I live in a villa. Fine. I live in an apartment. Fine. But not BHK. It's an abbreviation. Don't say it. Okay? Where are you from? I belong to the United States. No, I don't. I don't belong to the U.S. I'm from the United States. Whatever country you are from. Okay? Where are you from? I belong to. Why would you use a different verb? Where are you from with preposition? I am from the United States. Okay? So listen to them and use standard English. Don't use slang or use non-standard English or use abbreviations, don't do it. You wouldn't want to say, I was born in Jan, or me, I was born in April. I was born in April. No, I was born in April. Okay, I wouldn't abbreviate that. So don't use abbreviations in speaking. Okay? Please. So, now, let's talk about your hometown and village. These are simple questions about you. They're always about you. Part 1 and Part 2 of the speaking test are about you. So, let's talk about your hometown and village. What kind of place is it? It's big. Is that enough? Also, it's very simple vocabulary. How about, my hometown is a small town in the United States, in the state of Illinois. It's surrounded by cornfields and soybean fields. It's mostly farmers and small factories. There are 3 railroad lines that come through the town. So there's always noise from the trains that come through, morning, noon, and night. I remember growing up that we got used to the trains where we almost didn't hear them anymore. And then you just keep talking. See, I'm just talking about my hometown. And then the examiner will say, thank you. What's the most interesting part of your hometown? Nothing. Well, that's not a good enough answer. If you're not sure how to answer it, just imagine, okay, interesting. My hometown, well, it's a very small place, but there's a really nice park. It's a big park on the edge of town, has a golf course, swimming pool, sports fields, a clubhouse. So in the winter, people can go to the clubhouse and kids can play ping pong or they can play board games, things like that. So I'm talking about what's interesting or what's fun or what people might like to do, right? Because that's what people are saying when, what's interesting about it. Or I could say in a different town, oh, well, there's a university, okay, and it's big or it's medium-sized or it employs a lot of, you could talk about the university that's in your town, or you could talk about a big company that's there, or you could talk about the main industry, or you could talk about, see, there's lots of things you could talk about. So don't be shy. And remember, they're not going to call your mom to find out if you're telling the truth. Now, I'm not encouraging you to lie. What I'm encouraging you to do is talk, okay? So you see here a maximum of 8 questions in just over 4 minutes. Now, if you keep talking, they won't have time to ask you all 8 questions. But if you just give short answers, they will ask you all 8 questions. So what do you want? Do you want fewer questions that you answer thoroughly and completely and you keep talking and you do your job, which is to speak? Or are you going to sit there and give really short answers so the examiner has to ask you lots and lots and lots of questions? Because not only will they ask these questions, but they'll ask you why or why not for every one of them if you have not given them enough information. So it's 8 questions, but it could easily be 16. If they say, what kind of place is it? And you said, it's boring. Then the examiner is going to say, why? Because they want you to explain. It's boring because complex structure. Use the complex structures and explain why. Okay? All right. Now, that's part 1. Here's a sample conversation from part 1. Just gives you some examples of the language that this person used. And this is from a real test. Okay? Now, part 2 is called a long turn because you have to speak for about 2 minutes. They want you to speak for 2 minutes. They tell you 1 to 2 minutes. They really want you to speak for 2 minutes. Now notice, describe something you own, which is very important to you. Now, it's very important that you understand this. Now, here in part 1, if you don't understand a question, they will repeat it, but they will not explain it because it's simple language. They're not going to explain how long have you lived there. If you don't understand that question, you should not be taking the test. But here, if you don't understand one of these words, ask and they will explain it to you. Maybe you don't understand the word own. And you say, what do you mean own? And say, pay money for something. Oh, okay, own. Oh, yeah, okay, you own it, all right? Which is very important to you. Now, and then you start talking about your country. Wait a minute, you don't own your country. Now, notice the difference there. Describe something which is important to you, or describe something you own, which is very important to you. Big difference. So make sure you understand the question before you start speaking. You have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say before you start talking. So that's plenty of time to understand it and to respond appropriately, correctly, okay? If you don't understand, you're going to ask the examiner and they'll make sure you do understand. Now, remember, make sure you understand because of the big difference. If you didn't have the word own, or you didn't notice it, or you didn't think about it, and you talked about your country or your family here, that means you did not understand the question, and that is going to hurt your score. So be careful about that. Make sure you understand the question. And here's another sample of the part 2 at the top of the page. And you notice that paragraph in the middle. Okay? That's him speaking for 2 minutes. That's not very much language, but he stretched it out to 2 minutes. Now, what they don't have here is, one of the most important things I have is my piano, because I like playing the piano. I got it, my piano, I got it from my parents at my 12th birthday. Okay, so it doesn't have the, those pauses which are normal. But if you get the transcript of this conversation, you'll hear those things. But this person spoke for 2 minutes, and it's right there. You can read this paragraph. If you read this with the timer and you read it, it'd probably take you about 30 seconds. But if you speak it, it's going to be slower than that. Remember, reading is not the same as speaking. Now, once you finish part 2, you're going to go on to part 3. Now, part 1 was you questions, your hometown, your village. Part 2, something you own that's important to you, you questions. Part 3, let's consider, first of all, how people's values have changed. Now it's not you. They do not want you to speak just about yourself. You've already done that. You've spoken about yourself already. Now you need to speak about people in general. What kinds of things give status to people in your country? Well, don't talk about yourself, remember? Well, the things that give status to people in my country are, the things that give status to people have changed. In the past, it used to be the clothes you wore. They gave a lot of status to people. Today, people don't care as much. You can dress casually, even if you're rich or powerful. It doesn't mean as much. You're not expected to wear special clothes just because you have money. If you do, that's fine. You can wear nice clothing, but it's not as important for people's status. However, something that used to be important and is still important today is the kind of house you own or the car you drive. Those things still gave status to people in the past, and they still give status to people today. So see how I'm talking about different things and how they give status to people. And if you don't understand what do you mean by status, the examiner will explain it to you. So in part 1, you can't ask questions. But in part 2 and part 3, you can ask questions, and you should ask questions, okay, if you don't understand. Now, notice there are very few questions in part 3. The maximum will be about 4, maybe 6 questions. That's it. Because they're not really questions. It's just things to talk about. Plus, the examiner will be part of that conversation. What kinds of things give status to people? And you talk about cars, and they'll say, oh, really? Has that changed? So they're part of the conversation. And we're going to hear an example conversation in just a moment, and you'll see what I mean there about the examiner is part of the conversation. All right? So let's listen to this. It's a two-way discussion, two-way. It's not only the candidate speaking, it's also the examiner speaking. All right? So let's listen to this and see what you think.
Now, we've been talking about a well-known person who you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, being in the public eye. Famous people are watched by everybody. What are the advantages and disadvantages of that?
Okay, the advantages is that a lot of people watching you, so you become famous, and there are a lot of things which you can do correctly and politically right because, there is media watching you, and you can go ahead and pass the message to the media in a right way. The disadvantage is that you have to be diplomatically correct. At times, if there are certain things which are incorrect, still you have to go ahead and do that, which doesn't make sense because a lot of political leaders, they are into corruption back in India, and at times, there are some things which are wrong, but they have to do it.
Why do they have to do it?
Because there's a lot of political pressure, and if they don't do it, the political party would not support them, and in the end, they have to resign.
Do you think the media plays a role in that? What is the media's approach to reporting what famous people do?
Well, media plays an important role. At times, media will actually show things which are not correct, or, if you see it, it looks like, he's wrong, but that's not the case. So, media plays a very important role. They portray in a wrong manner at times, and sometimes they do portray in a right manner.
Can anything be done about that, do you think?
Not really, because in today's world, what has happened is everything is communicated by media, television, news, internet. So you just have to go ahead and, probably call the media and do a meeting and answer questions to the public and give justification and reasons.
Very often the media reports on the most trivial things in important issues, but people are fascinated by those things. Why are people fascinated by it?
Because these days people like to listen to gossip and trivial things. They're not interested in the bigger part, what's happening. They have a simple life. They would like to live it their way. They are not bothered what is happening within the country. There are only few people you see are really interested in knowing about the country and, getting all the information and reacting.
Let's go on and talk about this celebrity culture. How are famous people used by advertisers nowadays?
Famous people are really used for advertising because one, they can promote the product, and two, there are a lot of fans, they're fans. So obviously if they are using that product, what will happen is those fans will actually use that product, and of course it's a money-making business. I mean, if Mahatma Gandhi wore a watch of Swash, I would wear it. Yeah, I would wear it. I was like, oh, he wore it. I'll wear it.
The use of famous people in advertising and other things, do you think that has a negative effect, especially on young people?
At times, yes. There are some of the advertisements which are not meant or not, they are offensive to younger generations. So at times, yes.
Do you think that famous people can influence public opinion beyond just selling things? They can make people vote differently or believe?
Yes, they can. They influence a lot of people today. Even cricketers or any kind of famous personality, they influence the public, to do things.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm fine with that as long as, at times I do like, but then at times I don't like, so I don't bother much.
All right. Well, thanks, Kush. That's the end of the speaking test.
Thank you.
Okay, what'd you think? Oops. What'd you think? So, see the score that Kush got? What score did you think she got? I gave her an 8 for that. An 8, band score of 8. Fluency and coherence, fluent, long, detailed responses without loss of coherence. Some hesitation, and she used fillers to cover hesitations. She didn't go, Some languages do that. Listen to yourself, record yourself. Do you go, I know it sounds strange to do that, but a lot of languages do that to fill time when they're not speaking. English uses the word pauses like, but not, but some languages do. Lexical resource, wide range of vocabulary, used idioms and collocations, political pressure, corruption, okay, in today's world. Grammatical range and accuracy, wide range of structures, mostly error-free sentences, and only occasional minor errors. And pronunciation, she used it well to reinforce the meaning. The rhythm, the stress, the intonation were all appropriate. At times I do like, okay? There are only occasional lapses in word stress and in formula, like the sound th was more t, okay? So, Kush did a very good job. You can too. You can too. She spoke at a nice steady pace, not too fast and not too slow. Now, every day counts towards language skills. You know how I keep saying, you do your test prep in bite-sized pieces. It's every day. You don't have to do huge amounts every day. Do small amounts and do it once or twice a day. Don't try to sit down and do 6 hours of test prep. You'll hate it. You'll hate the test. You'll hate the test prep. You'll hate everything about it. And that negative attitude will then be part of your test taking. And you won't do as well. But if you do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and you actually read something that's interesting or you listen to something that's interesting, okay, it'll be a lot better for you. Bite-sized pieces on topics that you're interested in, whether it's fashion or cars or football or food or the weather. Okay? There are lots of things you can listen to and read about that aren't just boring, which is the word I hear most often. Remember that IELTS 7 is thousands of hours of preparation. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to take that long-term approach, and anything you do will help. You have to push yourself every day. You have to. If you don't, no one else will. Now, questions. So let me pull up some questions, and we've got a good 22 minutes till the top of the hour. Let's see here, chat screen. What have we got? me go back up a ways instead of being at the end. Good. There's some good tips from Shashi about preparation materials. Good. The preparation tests are on the website. To respond to the writing part, if you're talking about the writing assist, when you send in a task 1 and task 2, you'll get your full report in 2 or 3 days. It's that quick, okay? And they'll come back to you. So that's really quick if you do a writing assist. 2 or 3 days and you'll get your report. Let's see, there's the download for the download for the countdown booklet. It was sent to everyone. Let's see. Oh, what was that question? How is the speaking test going to be like via Zoom? Well, it's just like the regular speaking test, except, okay, now just for example, if I was your examiner, I'd be here, right, on Zoom. You would be with one of the staff of the test center and would be there to let you into the room because they check your identification. They've got masks on, you've got a mask on. You come in, you sit down at the computer. I ask them your name and your candidate number because the examiner, not me, but the examiner has a list in front of them with your name and your number so that the staff member confirms you are this person. I say, okay, it's this person, and then they leave the room, and then it's the speaking test, but it's done over this format of Zoom. And that's it. You can take off your mask if you want because you're the only person in the room. It's just you. But if you want to leave your mask on, sure, go ahead. No problem. Okay? Then when you're finished, you leave the room and you either take your computer-delivered test or wait till the weekend and take your paper-based test. It's very quick. It's very easy. It's the same length of time. All the questions are the same. So the only difference is that you're sitting down looking at a computer just like you are now, and the examiner is doing the same thing. I've seen tests done from halfway around the world simultaneously, and there's no hesitation, there's no time lag, but most of them, their examiner is actually in the next room, or they're in the next, they're a floor up or a floor down, or maybe they're in the next building. It's not always long distance, but it can, my point is, it could be, and it would not affect the test. It has nothing to do with the distance. It's just that you're not in the same room together. Now, let's see here. Can I use a watch during the test? No, you cannot have a watch on during the test. Any part of the test, you cannot. There will be a clock on the wall in the listening, reading, and writing test. There'll be a clock on the wall in the computer room if you take the computer-delivered test, but you cannot have a watch on. When will you get confirmation of your date of your speaking test? Well, once you register, you get a confirmation email. You're asked to choose your speaking date and speaking time. Sometimes it's assigned to you. If you have a conflict, let them know immediately. They'll schedule you differently. Other times you get to choose your time. So it varies from test center to test center. I received a mail saying speaking tests will be confirmed 2 to 3 days before. And I didn't receive confirmation. Well, the most common thing that happens is you just don't check your email. People are so used to these days using WhatsApp and SMS that they forget they have an email address. But test centers use email because it's more official, it's more permanent, it can't be just deleted or forgotten about, it's there. Okay? I mean, you can delete an email, of course, but the sender still has it. And so check your email if you want a confirmation, all right? Let's see. Do we have to leave an empty line and indent between paragraphs in a paper-based test, or indent only is enough? Well, I always tell my students to do both. The reason for that is if you indent and leave an empty line, it's very clear where your paragraphs begin and end. Also, if you write the whole thing and then you go, oh, you know what? I want to change this, and you edit. Maybe you cross out something or erase, and you add some information. By having that empty line, you've got space to do that. You could add something to paragraph 2, or you could add something to your introduction because you have an empty line. And because you also indented the first line, your paragraph is not going to disappear. Just because you fill that space, if you did not indent and you fill that empty space, your paragraphs disappear. But if you indent and you fill the empty space, you can still see your paragraphs. I hope that's clear. The webinar is not recorded. Obviously, some people use a recorder, and that's fine if you chose to do that. Do you need to bring a hard copy of anything on the test? No, and in fact, you don't need to bring anything with you except your identification. If you don't remember which identification you used to register with the test, bring, for example, here in the UAE, they can use their Emirates ID or their passport. But if you don't remember which one you used, bring them both. But you don't need paper, pencils, you don't need a laptop, definitely you don't need a watch, definitely no phone. Now, you can leave things in your car, leave things with your friends, or they will take things and put them in a safe, secure, locked room during the test, and they will give everything back to you after the test. But try not to bring extra things with you. If you have a cold or cough, hopefully you're not sick, like COVID or something, but people get it, or maybe you have an allergy. Sometimes I get an allergy. And so I would bring some strepsils with me, right, to the test. Tell them I have some strepsils because I have a sore throat. Okay? No problem. Put them on the desk so they don't see you reaching into your pocket for something which might look suspicious. They're on your desk. It's not a big deal. You can have water on your desk. Now, sometimes you can bring your own bottle. Sometimes they don't let you do that, but they'll give you water. Okay? If you cannot take your own, they will give you water if you want it. But be careful about drinking too much water, because if you drink water, you're going to have to take a toilet break. And that time when you go out of the room comes out of your test. There's no official break during the test. So anytime you stand up and leave the room, that's time you do not have to spend on the test. So please do not leave the room during the writing test. I mean, obviously, if you absolutely have to, go. But if you can possibly wait, don't go during the reading test. And you cannot leave the room during the listening test. No one can. You can leave during the reading and writing tests. And if you can wait until the writing test, because you will have a little bit of extra time. Most people have a bit of extra time in the writing test, but not in the reading test. Let's see here. Another question about sharing the presentation. It's not shared directly, but obviously you can use a handheld recorder on your phone or take photographs of certain pages. That's fine, absolutely fine. But this is not a presentation that's shared. The whole thing isn't shared with the audience. Some thank yous there. You're welcome. Is there a way to release the stress before the speaking test? Step outside, take deep breaths, stretch. It's what actors do before they go on stage. They stretch their mouth. They scream loudly. Move your muscles, jump up and down. Right? Don't strain your voice because that's even worse. But just a little bit of movement will help a lot. Walk up the stairs instead of taking the lift if you're on the second floor. Little things like that gets the blood flowing. If you have 15 minutes till your test starts, stand up instead of sitting down. Gets the blood flowing. You'll do better. Because during the test, you're going to be sitting down. Why do you need to sit down all the time? Stand up for a few minutes. Gets the blood flowing. Then you go in the room and you sit down. You're comfortable. Then you feel kind of rested because you've been standing up and you feel ready to go. It's great. It's a good way to do it. Let's see. How will I know if I exceed the time limit for speaking? Well, the examiner will say, thank you, and then he will stop you. Excuse me, okay, our time is up. Let's move on. We have to move. Sorry to interrupt. They will do something, make it very clear. They might even say, okay, please stop. Because sometimes people just won't stop talking. It's just true. And they might have to say, please, stop now. Thank you. And they'll just go on with the rest of the test. Don't get insulted. Don't get angry at them. They're just doing their job. They have to go on to the next part of the test. Okay? So let the examiner control the test, please. In the reading section, when we have to write 2 or 3 words, what if we write only 1? Well, you don't have to write 2 or 3 words. It just means the word limit doesn't mean you have to write no more than 3 words and or a number. Doesn't mean you have to write 3 words. It means you can write 1, 2, or 3, depending on what the answer is. Does not mean you have to write 3 words. Okay? So please, a word limit does not mean you must write the maximum number of words. It means you must not write more than the maximum number. You can write fewer, but not more. Let's see. Can you choose a speaking test date? To some extent, yes. Talk to your test center. If there's a conflict, for example, if they schedule you when you're working, let them know and they'll reschedule you, okay? Typically, they give you a lot of choice for the time, okay? You get a lot of input and choice for the time. They might say, what time on Friday is best for you, just for example, okay? Or what time on Saturday is best for you. And you say, I have a flight at 3 o'clock. Can you put me earlier? They'll do it, okay? They're helpful. But if you just want an early test, don't lie about it. Just say, if possible, please schedule me early, and they'll do it if they can. It's a lot better than coming up, inventing an excuse, I have to take my daughter to the hospital. And they probably already know you're not even married. It doesn't mean you don't have a daughter, but it's less likely. You're just coming up with an excuse. Don't do that. There are a lot of people taking the test, and everybody wants, what's good for themselves. But there's no reason to do things like that. They will help you when and if they can. The test center staff are very, very helpful. They're terrific people. I've been working with them for a long time. I trained a lot of them, and I know how good they are. So please, let them do their jobs. Just like with the examiners, let them lead you in the speaking test. Don't try to dominate the speaking test. Okay? There's no reason to do that. In the writing test, will I get penalized if I use a capital letter in my words? No. Well, it depends on if it goes against the rules of writing. Now, if you have The beginning of your sentence is a capital letter, uppercase letter. So there are 3 hills, and you put H, capital letter, ILLS. Well, why did you use a capital letter for the word hills? Just because it's a noun? Now, in German, you capitalize nouns, but not in English. So now, if you did that with every noun, they would penalize you. If you did that with every other word, it might hurt your score a little bit. But they don't typically care about that. They care about the spelling. Now, if you want to write everything in uppercase letters, that's fine, okay? But you have to realize that the first letter of a sentence must be taller than the others. First letter of a name, M-A-R-K, in the writing test. The M must be taller than the A-R-K, okay? In Dubai, D must be taller than the U-B-A-I, right? Rules of writing. So you can use all uppercase letters, but you still have to follow those rules of writing. Okay, I hope that makes sense. But in the computer-delivered test, don't do that. Use uppercase for the beginning and for nouns, right, for proper words, things like that. All right? Punctuation, there is no positive, negative. They don't care about punctuation in any of the tests. They don't care. All right? But speaking of punctuation, in the writing test, try not to use contractions like isn't, can't, don't. All right? Is not, cannot, do not, will not. All right? Don't use abbreviations in the writing test. Don't use abrevs in the SPT test. Okay? Don't use abbreviations in the speaking test or in the writing test. Please use abbreviations in the listening and reading tests, okay? Because you'll be less likely to misspell an abbreviation than you will a full word. Much more likely to misspell kilometer than km. Pretty difficult to misspell km. And speaking of kilometer, it doesn't matter if you spell it M-E-T-E-R or M-E-T-R-E. British or American spelling, doesn't matter. They're both perfectly acceptable. You could say lorry or truck. You could say lift or elevator. It doesn't matter. They mean the same exact thing. Do you get a certificate of attendance for this? No, you don't. Sorry. That's a good idea, though. I like that. Let's see. Matching in the reading section. Another reason to use the computer-delivered test, like headings for paragraphs or main ideas, because you can click on them. There'll be a list of them. You can drag it over and drop it in the main idea at the beginning of the paragraph or at the beginning of the heading of the section, and then read, go, no, it's not there, and drag it down to the next one, drag it down to the next one. In the paper-based test, it's like you're watching a tennis match. You've got your list of headings, you've got your paragraphs. Headings, paragraphs, headings. In the computer-delivered test, you click and drag it over, try it here, and you go, yeah, that's it. You leave it there. And then you get the next one. And if you did drop it on top of the first one goes back to the list and the second one takes its place. So the same rules of dropping and dragging and clicking and dragging that hold true in the computer-delivered test. It's really good for those headings, main idea questions. I really like the computer-delivered reading test for that. I like it for lots of reasons, but that's one of the main ones. Let's see. Writing uppercase or lowercase in listening doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's not a sentence. Rules of writing don't apply. It's just the answer to a question, right? It's just the answer to a question. My name, Mark Cleland. The answer, C-L-E-L-A-N-D. Doesn't matter. It's just the answer to a question. Let's see. True, false, not given. So true is supported by the information in the reading. False is canceled by the information in the reading. And not given, it's just not there. So you have to be very careful with not given, because what they'll do is they'll use similar vocabulary. So it might seem like it's there, but you have to, reading is vocabulary. That's what it is. If you don't have a strong enough vocabulary to know the difference between the meaning of, the different meanings of different words, it is going to hurt your score in the reading test. It just is, because vocabulary is the most important thing in the reading test. It's just a fact. That's why you need to answer all the questions that have numbers, names, dates, times, cities, countries, languages, because those are words that you can find, you can scan. If there's a question about Chicago, you're going to scan it, you're going to find Chicago, you're going to circle it or highlight it, and then read that, because that will be the answer to the question about Chicago. But if you have a question about sleep disorders, you're going to have to look for vocabulary about sleep and about, now disorder, if that's in the question, they're not going to have the word disorder in the reading section. So what are you going to look for? Problems with sleeping, something like that. Or they might even put apnea, which is the sickness, right, of sleep disorder. It's the official name. So vocabulary questions are much more difficult. If the number 100,000 is in your question, you're going to look for the number 100,000, and that's where the answer is going to be. So any questions in the reading that are numbers, names, dates, right, cities, countries, languages, colors, right, anything like that, those you can find quickly and answer quickly. But it's the questions that have a lot of vocabulary that are more difficult to answer, more difficult to find, and that's why you need to read. But are you going to try and read an hour a day? No. You're going to read 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, bite-sized pieces, and that's what will help you most of all. It's 9 o'clock. Thank you very much. To me, the time always flies in this presentation. Time flies, tempus fugit. I don't know if it flew for you, but it does for me. I hope it was helpful. I hope you got some good tips and suggestions. I hope you realize a little bit more about what you need to do, what's expected of you, and know that you can do this. You can do this. Okay, don't be afraid of it. Remember that IELTS isn't the wall that you're trying to break through. It's the door. Okay? There is a wall, but there's a door in it, and if you can open that door with your IELTS test. So think of it as the way through the wall and not the wall itself. And that's a very true analogy. Very true. It isn't the wall. It's the way through the wall. Okay? All right, everyone. Thank you very much. My name again is Mark Cleland. Pleasure being with you this evening. Hope to see you next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Dubai time. All I'll do for 1 hour is answer questions. That's it. Just answer question for 1 hour. So please come if you can. It's completely free for test takers. Be glad to help you. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to Shashi for his patience and his professionalism and his skill in helping to make this presentation possible. Thank you to all the staff here at IDP Dubai and the regional office, to Darren and Marilyn and everyone else here, and Ayo and Shashi and Amani and everybody who's helped to make this presentation possible. And most of all, thank you for your great questions, your attendance, your focus, and hope to meet you someday. That would be fantastic. Let me know. And if you do meet me, say, oh, I was in your countdown. That'd be great. All right? I'd appreciate that. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great evening. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Keep social distancing. Let's beat COVID the only way we can, which is social distancing and personal hygiene and staying away from groups of people. Sorry about that. It'd be great to go out to see a movie, but I'm not going to do it for a while yet. Be safe. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.